stuff, we really wanted to talk about that stuff. So you game for that?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, cool. So before we do that, I've got another promo for you.
Okay.
So this holiday season, Harris Meadery is happy to offer its new Cherry Raspberry Currant Mead made from Morello cherries, red ripe Florida raspberries, and currants from New England. Let this coast-to-coast melomel warm the cockles of your heart at your next family gathering. It pairs nicely with dark meat turkey, beef Wellington, and robust rustic dishes. Harris Meadery Raspberry Cherry Currant. Ask for it by name.
I already want some.
Yeah, I know, right? This is like,
Yeah, I can feel my mouth watering now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I like your pairing choices too. Those are pretty good. You should send a bottle of that out to Chrissy Mannion Zarpur. She's writing the Mead and food pairing book.
Yeah. I've been looking at a lot of her selections online, and it's just really, really fascinating to see what she's paired everything with.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to read, and thinking, man, I've got to cook that.
I know, right?
I have to make that, exactly. So.
Yeah, I do exactly the same thing. So, all right, so let's talk citrus melons. When did you start? Did you start making citrus melomels when you were still doing homemade making?
Yeah, we have. We've done a lot of different citrus melomels, using everything from oranges to lemons to other citrus like pomelo, which is really prevalent in our area, but you might not see them too much. It's sort of a cross between a Meyer lemon and a grapefruit.
Oh, okay.
So we've had the opportunity to play with a lot of different citrus just from being in the area where we are. A lot of our different batches that we've been able to do, just small home brewing batches or competition batches, 5 and 10 gallon batches. We've been able to do. One of our favorites down here is just a drink that we like to call Skeeter Pea, which is essentially just a fermented lemonade. It's a hard lemonade, and so easy to make with a little bit of honey or sugar and Meyer lemon juice, and just let that ferment out, and then stabilize it and back sweeten it. It's absolutely fantastic every single time we make it.
Nice.
But yeah, we sure have. And the number one issue that we've run into with dealing with citrus in meads is really the pH of the citrus fruit. Once you juice it and you're getting ready to prepare it and use it, you really have to watch your pH levels to make sure that they don't crash too hard. Typically, we like ours to have a pH under 3.5, but in that 3.5 to 3.0 range if we can get it. You don't really need to add things to your citramels as far as adding citric acid or anything like that back to brighten up the flavors of the meads that you make with it. You really just have to watch that pH for the benefit of your yeast that you're working with, so that you're not stressing them out too much during the fermentation. So that's been one of our biggest challenges, is properly blending it, properly taking your pH measurements just to make sure that that's all going to stay stable throughout the fermentation process. So.
Now, when you do your limes, are you fermenting the juice, or are you adding fruit in after fermenting a traditional?
Typically, we do half and half. We add half up front, and then we add half in secondary. So typically, we will ferment out usually about half. We'll add right to the must, and then add the yeast on top of that after we've pre-mixed with water and honey. And then we'll add the other half in secondary just to brighten up the flavor. And that seems to be working pretty well for us. is just add a little bit in secondary, and then just keep our eye on it from there.
Okay.
Have
you? Go ahead, Becky.
Well, I was just going to ask. I know you've got the yeasts that you use that are tolerant for the temperatures in Florida, but have you noticed that there are particular yeasts that are happier with citrus than others?
And once again, those are in the killer yeast strains. And another reason why we selected the two that we did. 71B, of course, is notorious for what it can do for malic acid, but it's fairly acid tolerant, just all on its own. And EC 1118, I swear you can't kill that yeast. That yeast is just a monster, and basically ferments just about any high gravity mead as long as you do some tons of steps to it to nurse it along with degassing and proper feeding. It will just ferment our high gravity, low pH meads, just absolutely just ferment it completely. I mean, we start with some of our meads are as high as 1.15, and they'll ferment out to 0.995 or 0.998 specific gravity.
Wow.
And it's just a killer strain. And right, so
I know people that have taken that to like 18, 19, and even 20 and 20+% in the right conditions.
I have actually taken it to 18, but I only had one clementine in there for acidity.
Yeah.
And the rest of it was all elder fruits.
You can absolutely. That's a yeast that also tolerates a technique that's known as a rum washing as well. It's where you're constantly adding a sugar source and an oxygen source to keep it in krausen for as long as possible. Absolutely, you can take it way up there as far as its ABV range is concerned. It's a really, really tough yeast, and we really, really like it for that respect. We're working with citrus too. So those are the major concerns: is trying to create a healthy environment for the yeast to ferment in and balance that pH out properly. It's really, really hard to bring the pH back up once the fermentation process is started or after the fact. You can add calcium bicarbonate to it to try to bring it up, but we found that tends to precipitate out of solution after time, and just winds up settling out in our filters after a while. So we find that the best way, if it's too acidic, it's got too much acid in it, is just to have a little bit of base mead still available that you can blend with. It's the best tip I can do for that. And that way, just like other wines, you can actually blend it back to the base mead and get it back into the proper pH range where you need it to go. So it's typically what we'll do is we'll try to blend it with a younger mead or a base mead that we've retained a little of before we put any adjuncts in it, and just try to bring it back to center if we can.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of zesting. Not throwing in the whole peel, of course, but just getting that colored part of the zest and leaving behind the pithy bits because of the bitterness.
Well, that's where all the flavor is.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. Yeah.
And are you? Do you generally like to use zest, or is that?
We have used it in some of our meads, but typically we don't. Not with the ones that we have in production now. I usually find that a little more common to some home distillation that I've done in the past. But that's something that we don't do as a meadery. But if you wanted to make a nice limoncello or orangecello,
I use it for limoncello. I make limoncello all the time.
And we love doing an orangecello where we just use a little bit of grain alcohol, vanilla, and once again the
That's the easy way.
Right, and or you can use a nice quality brandy, either one, and adding vanilla bean to it, and the citrus peel or just citrus zest. If you get all the pith out of it, you'll get most of the bitterness. Take all that white pith off of the orange or the lemon peel, and just slice it up to increase the surface area, and let it soak, and it just turns out fantastic.
Yeah.
So.
I generally I'll juice when I make my limoncello. I juice and then zest and throw all of that in there, and I don't know, most of my batches I'll use a dozen or a couple dozen lemons depending on how many people, I'm trying to get it to. But it works out really well, and I love how, once you've I use Everclear or high-end vodka with mine.
Yeah, grain alcohol, right?
Yeah, grain alcohol. But I've used brandy, but I really prefer the neutrality of the vodka for that. But when I've done it, I love how it leaches the color out as well. So you get that lovely golden color,
And the longer you let it sit, just like aging out mead, you can actually rack off of the lees. Because it's usually pretty cloudy at first. But if you let it sit, just like mead, just put it in the closet, forget about it for a while, or in the back of your freezer, wherever you have it, and just let it chill out, and then rack off of those lees, and you have just a crystal clear product. It just tastes fantastic.
I actually filter mine. I let it sit in the grain alcohol. Well, I let the alcohol sit on the fruit until the peel goes white, and then strain out all the solids. Then let that sit, and I still teach cordial making classes, which is not like it's that hard to make a cordial really, but But I will, once I put it in the bottle, I'll just stick it in the closet, like you say, and I'll just, every time I go into the pantry to get something, I grab it and shake it to keep things going, and get that flavor all the way through there. And then at some point, I let it settle all the way down, and coffee filters are your friend. Coffee filters are a really, really big siphon.
That's what I used when I made raspberry. I made raspberry liqueur doing the same thing, and coffee filters. I certainly don't use them for coffee.
Yeah, my husband doesn't. He gets mad at me because I'll use them all up. But I start out with cheesecloth, and what I do is I've got a funnel that's like the size of my head, and it's huge, and it's got a screen that actually fits into the bottom before when it narrows down to the funnel part. So I put that, and then lay cheesecloth over that, and then just dump the whole thing in there and let that drain through, and then. It's usually like 3 strainings by the time I get to the coffee filters, because once it goes on the coffee filters, then you might as well just cover it and walk away, because it's going to be a couple of days.
And it's going to take time to get through that.
It's going to take time, and you have to keep changing the coffee filters. It's just like
unless it was already really clear to begin with, that's what I found.
Yeah. But generally, I can get it to go pretty clear, and then there's always dropout. I mean, I've got a bottle sitting on the sideboard right now that is a couple years old, and it's got that like half inch or so of fluffy stuff that sits at the bottom.
Yeah.
So.
And you can rack off of that if you choose to, or you can just I
just pour carefully.
It's fine. Pour carefully is all you need to do. Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful to do it that way. We've been making it for a long time. Yeah.
I've been thinking about doing a key lime cello. Just seeing if I can make it.
Yeah, you could do it.
Yeah,
I would use the zest if you could, because there's a lot of pith on those little key limes.
Yes, there is.
You should be able to find them. I know that they sell key limes bagged down here. They're also known on the West Coast as Mexican cloudy lime, is what they call it in Mexico. So in California, you'll find them as Mexican cloudy lime. But essentially, it's the same variety, very, very small, very tart, almost bitter, small lime. And just use the zest if you can on those, if you going to make a cordial or a limoncello out of it.
Yeah. Well, I figured I'd zest a bunch of them, but there's not a lot of juice in those, and I do have bottles of juice, so I can use that as my juice. So yeah, it's been something it's been racking around in my mind for a while, wanting to do, just because I adore key lime. But,
actually, I had a bag of key limes, and I threw them through my juicer.
That'll work.
That's one way too. Yeah.
Well, they bounced right back out, so